of Bedar, there lived a pious Brahman named Damaji Pant. Though his king was a Muslim, Damaji Pant served him with unflinching loyalty and earned his complete trust. So great was the king's confidence in him that he appointed Damaji Pant as the governor of Mangalvedha, a prosperous town just 14 miles from the sacred city of Pandharpur. Then came the great famine. The skies withheld their rains, the grass withered and crumbled to dust, pools that had once shimmered under the Deccan sun dried up completely, livestock perished, the strong abandoned their homes and fled to distant lands in search of survival, the weak, the old, the sick, the destitute had no choice but to stay behind. Many of them perished, the land of abundance had become a land of grief. One day, a gaunt and hollow-eyed Brahman from the nearby city of Pandharpur came to Damaji Pant's door begging for food. Damaji Pant, true to his nature, bowed to the holy man and welcomed him with warmth and respect. He led him inside and seated him on a dining platform. Food was laid before the Brahman, but just as he was about to eat, he broke down weeping. Damaji Pant was alarmed. "What ails you, good sir? Why do you weep?" Through his tears the Brahman said, "How can I eat, while my wife and children have not eaten in 4 days? They are starving in Pandharpur." Without a moment's hesitation, Damaji Pant said, "Put your heart at rest. I will not let your family starve. This very evening, I shall send 2 cartloads of grain to your home." And he did exactly that. He commanded his servants to fill 2 carts with sacks of grain and dispatch them to Pandharpur at once. But the grain never reached the Brahman's family. As the carts passed through a large village, the starving villagers spotted the sacks. Half mad with hunger, they rushed at the carts, tore open the sacks, and carried off every last grain. The Brahman cried out in anguish. Hearing his lament, other Brahmar of Pandharpur gathered around him. When they learned that it was Damaji Pant of Mangalvedha who had sent the grain, they rushed to his door by the dozens, all of them starving, all of them begging for mercy. Damaji Pant's courtyard filled with the skeletal haunted faces of hundreds of desperate souls. He looked at them, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Kshudra alike, and his heart broke open. He went inside to his wife and laid out the terrible dilemma before her. The only grain large enough to feed them all was in the king's storehouse. To use it without the king's permission was a crime punishable by death. "What shall I do?" he asked her. "You must do whatever it takes," she said quietly, "to save the Brahman." Damaji Pant stood in silence for a moment. Then he spoke. "The king will kill me, but what does my life matter if I can save the lives of all these people?" He walked to the royal granary and opened its doors. Word of Damaji Pant's extraordinary act spread like wildfire through Pandharpur and beyond, but not everyone rejoiced. A Kannada Brahman called Mujumdar, long consumed by jealousy of Damaji Pant, saw his chance. He rushed a letter to the king at Bedar detailing exactly what Damaji Pant had done. The king's fury was instant and total. He sent royal messengers galloping to Mangalvedha with the terrifying order, Damaji Pant must present himself at Bedar immediately and render a full account. "If I find a single error," thundered the king, "I will cut off his head." When the messengers arrived with the royal command, the villagers Damaji Pant had fed watched silently, whispering to each other. "They will take him to Bedar, the king will cut off his head." Damaji Pant's heart sank for a moment and then steadied. "I knew the risk," he said. "I risked my life to save others." He made an request of the messengers that they take the road through Pandharpur. They agreed. At Pandharpur, Damaji Pant bathed in the holy Bhima river and then entered the great temple of Lord Krishna. He prostrated himself before the divine image and prayed, his voice low and broken. "Helper of the helpless, Savior of the world, Lord of the earth, I have come to bid you farewell. I have been unfaithful to the king's trust. He will have me beheaded. But Lord Krishna, whatever happens to me, please do not withdraw your grace from me." He pressed his head to the feet of the image and kissed them. Then he rose, bowed to Satyabhama, Rukmani, Garud, and Hanuman, and walked away with the messengers toward whatever fate awaited him. But in the divine realm, Lord Krishna had heard every word of that prayer. He looked at the situation and said to himself, "This is a just man. What appears a crime in the king's eyes is a righteous act in mine. I must save him." Swift as a thought, Lord Krishna calculated the full market value of every grain taken from the royal storehouse. He placed its equivalent, 1,78,000 rupees, in a sack. Then he took on the disguise of a Mahar laborer. He wrote a letter in Damaji Pant's own handwriting, tucked it with the sack, and set off for Bedar. His assumed name, Vithu Naik, a servant of Damaji Pant's household. At the gates of Bedar, Vithu Naik presented himself, a humble labourer with a sack on his shoulder and a letter to deliver. The Wazir read the letter aloud before the king. It was from Damaji Pant, explaining that due to the famine, he had sold 11,000 khandis of the royal grain at a price 4 annas higher per rupee, and was now repaying the full amount through his servant Vithu Naik. The courtiers laughed. The sack was tiny. How could it possibly hold nearly 2 lakh rupees? The king ordered the clerks to count it. They poured out the coins and began to count, but as fast as they counted and emptied the sack, it filled again with gold. They counted and counted until they were exhausted. The total exceeded the amount owed. The king stared in stunned disbelief. He ordered the money and the sack cast into his treasury. The king turned on the Mujammadar with fury. He is a liar, he declared. The jealous informant's goods were seized and he and his family were thrown into prison. The king ordered robes of honor and a jeweled ring be sent to Damaji Pant as reward. Meanwhile, Damaji Pant and the messengers had lost their way and arrived at Bedar only the following evening, a day late and trembling with fear. But the king leapt from his throne and embraced him warmly. "It is all a mistake, Damaji Pant. Yesterday your servant Vithu Naik came with your letter and full payment. I am very pleased with you." Damaji Pant stood dumbfounded. He had no servant by that name. Then in a flash it dawned on him, and his eyes filled with tears. He told the king the entire truth, that Lord Krishna himself must have appeared in disguise to save him. The king was struck to his core. "It is I who am in your debt, Damaji Pant," he said softly, "for through you I have seen Lord Krishna with my own eyes." The king granted Damaji Pant his release from royal service, just as he had asked. And from that day forward, Damaji Pant and his wife returned to Pandharpur, to the banks of the sacred Bhima, and the feet of Lord Krishna's image. They spent the rest of their lives in worship, song and praise. Two souls who had staked everything on faith, and found that faith had not forsaken them. If you liked this story, be sure to click the subscribe and like buttons. You can also share this story with your loved ones.